Good morning. I see at least one person out there. Yay, hi Lisa. Thank you. How have you been? Well, I'll just see. Oh, you do have your egg. Good. I hope more people join. I'm just going to wait a little bit and see what happens. Lisa, I did write a little blog post that I'm going to refer to today. So if you want to look through that before I start, I'll just wait a little longer and see if anyone else comes on this morning. Hi, Mary. Thanks for saying hi. Mary, I shared a link in the comments there to a post that I put up with notes for this session. And I'll just wait a couple more minutes and see if anyone else pops up. Hello, new people. Hi, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, Alana, I'm so glad you're here. You could maybe give some, I feel like you'd have a lot to add to this conversation today. Hi, Paulette. Thanks for joining. So I shared a link up there to a post that I have. If anyone wants notes or anything on the things that we talk about today. Hey, Barbara. So good to see you. You can refer to that. I'm going to be referring to that post. There's a lot of links on there to things, to resources. Yeah. And I'm gonna just briefly talk about things, all of that stuff on the post there. So I just want to say, first of all, it's awesome to see all of you again. I know it's been a few weeks, and I just needed to kind of reset. And I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future. Hi, Joanne. And again, I love when everyone sends me your work when you're after these sessions, so please continue to do that. I do post to my blog when I can, and when I get enough people, I do that. So feel free to send me your work. Feel free to share this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I think you all already do that. So I wanted to address this issue today about eco-friendly practices because I get it asked so often. I have people write to me and they have a moral conundrum about making art versus being environmentally sound. And, it's a moral dilemma for sure that I don't always feel equipped to respond to be quite honest, because for me, I just need to paint. And painting is just a vocation and a calling. And if I didn't do it, I feel like I could inflict greater harm that way. Who knows how? So I think like that's my primary response is I think it's important to do what you love. With that said, there are practices that you can take as an artist that might lessen your impact on the environment. On my blog post, I also make the argument that, in if you consider how much waste is produced by certain industries, I put a link to the fashion industry, which Alana alerted me to, the waste that's produced there. You need to ask yourself if your little studio is really the problem. Your little tiny studio, how much waste are you producing compared to, other industries out there? And maybe your time and resources can go towards making changes in those arenas. I'm just putting that out there. And working for cleaner resources and energy and all of that. Another thing you can try doing is, if you you use a lot of oil paint or certain products, maybe you will drive less or, parse it out. Maybe there's other practices you do that will balance that out. So don't let it stop you, I think is the biggest thing. I have a lot of people who stop taking classes with me, or they just say, I can't deal with the environment. And I also have a lot of people that won't buy art because of that. Not that I have, but I've met people that don't like to buy art for that reason also. And I think, to each their own is all I'm going to say. Okay, so with that said, I'm just going to go over some practices that you can try. And then today we'll experiment with making some eco-friendly biodegradable art. So another thing that you should think about is, like, if you want your art to last forever, which seems to be a really big hang up in the art world, they want everything archival, it's probably not going to be very eco-friendly if you think about it. So just put that in your, think about that. And then, every action creates waste on some level. So, unless you're working primarily with land and natural resources, you're probably going to be creating waste on some level, doing something. Okay, so I'm going to refer to my notes. Like I said, I put the link in the comment section here, and I also have it below the video. So if you're like, I don't really care, like I'm not so into the environment, but you could also think about creating a non-toxic studio for your health. So it's not always the case, but generally healthy, non-toxic products are also eco-friendly products. Again, this is not always the case. I looked into pencils, like the benign little pencil, and it seems like a very eco-safe product, right? But actually, like, mining the graphite is a whole industry, and then the wood is treated in a way so it doesn't biodegrade as quickly, blah, 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 blah. Like, if you actually go ahead and research some of these things, they're not as, manufacturing them was a whole process. Charcoal also, but we'll get back to that. Look for labels that state that the product is a renewable material. Try looking for natural dyes, recycled content and packaging, FSC certification, and no to low volatile organic compounds. So that means solvents and petroleum products. let's see. Oh, look for AP approved product or certified product seal as determined by the Art and Creative Materials Institute. I put a link to that organization. They go through and they look at all products and they rate how toxic they are. So that's a really good resource to know about, just if you are concerned about your own health. Avoid products that have warning labels. Limit your use of petroleum products, aerosols, solvents, and fumey things like rubber, cement, glue. In my classes, when I'm teaching in the classroom, I'm always trying to avoid those kind of products because it's not fun to be near them. They will cause you harm if you inhale them. So if you are working with products like that, always have a ventilated space when you're working with them. And handle them carefully. Oil paints and solvents are usually like a little more harmful on the environment than acrylics. And yeah, when you work with them, open your window, keep the air flowing. Let's see, what else do I have on here? Avoid toxic pigments like cadmiums. Arsenic, lead, chromium is another one. In general, I just think it's a really good practice to just pretend that all your paints are somewhat toxic. Don't put them in your mouth. Again, oil paint is more dangerous to handle because of the petroleums in it. And I always wear gloves when I'm working with oils for that reason. With acrylics, it's not so bad, but some acrylic paints do use chemicals that are harmful for the environment, but also harmful for you. So look for labels that say hue, H-U-E. Let's see if I have one here. I do, perfect. So here's a great example, cadmium red, medium hue. Hue means that it's a reproduction of the actual pigment. Cadmiums are toxic for the environment. They produce very bright, beautiful colors, but they are harmful for the environment, and they're also very expensive. So if you find any cadmium, yellow, orange, red, if you find a label that says hue, it's not made with the actual cadmium material. So it's going to be less harmful to yourself and to the environment. So be aware of that. I think I'll get to it. My friend Alana, who may still be here, alerted me to the fact that glitter, even though we love it so much, is not great for the environment. It's made from plastic. It gets in the oceans. It like hurts animals in the ocean. There are some biodegradable glitters that you can purchase. I put a link in that blog post. Another thing to consider is mica. We are living in the land of mica. I found these beautiful, huge flakes of mica when I was hiking one day. And you can also purchase mica powder, but this is a natural material and it's glittery. One of my favorite things when I moved to this area was that the dirt glitters. I think it's such a wonderful thing about this area that we live in. And I also put a link to earth pigments. I have never tried their products, but they're all extracted naturally, like natural pigments from the earth, and they have mica powders as well. If you have a ton of glitter, like I do, I'm not throwing it out. I'm going to use it up, but just saying in the future, you might consider finding biodegradable glitter to work with. So those are just some little things. A really big thing you can do as an artist, and I'm going to admit that I don't do this as well as I should, but you want to avoid washing your paint and your pigments down the drain as much as possible. So I always encourage students, wipe your brushes off on a rag before you take them to the sink to wash them. Wipe your palette off before you take it to the sink to wash it. So that's primary. Don't be washing big blobs of paint down the sink if you can avoid that. The second thing that I learned is that if you're working with water, like with acrylics, if you let your water sit, the pigments will eventually go to the bottom. And there's a word for it, and I cannot think of it right now. And what you can do, and I'm going to do this. This has been sitting since yesterday, so it's not entirely clean. But you can pour that water off and reuse that. And then usually there'll be some sludge at the bottom of your container, and you can wipe that out with a paper towel, and then like deal with disposing that instead of pouring it all down the sink. I have done that with my oil painting practice all the time. I have a bucket that I clean my brushes in, and the solvents will settle to the bottom. And then I pour out, or sorry, the pigments settle to the bottom, and then I pour the rest out and I reuse it. So you can do that. And also I put a link to an article that gets really into how you should actually be collecting all your like towels, all of your sludge, collect it and dispose of it at your nearby toxic waste place. And in Asheville, that's at the landfill. So I might try to do that. Honestly, I don't do that. I'm going to be honest. I tend to pour the water out and wipe off the sludge and wipe off my brushes and all that, but I haven't been collecting the sludge. Could be interesting to collect the sludge and use that for something. There's an oil company that they have a product called Torrid Gray that they put out every year, and it's all their sludge combined for the year into a paint, and it's usually a gray of some sort, of course. So think about how you wash your pigments down the drain. Just try to avoid, I mean, I would say, you know, if you're washing big globs of paint down the drain, just try to avoid that. Wipe them off first. You can try purchasing used art materials. If you have an abundance of materials, give them away to people. Don't throw them out. Contact me if you have to, if you're not sure where to take them. There are some local organizations. I know of one that will start doing a drive for art materials to give to families for the next school year. I think it's called Beloved Asheville. I don't know if they've actually started the drive, but if you want to contact me about that privately, that's great. But don't just throw your stuff out. I have a feeling I'm going to have like a porch full of materials, but I love all the extra stuff. As much as possible, use materials made out of recycled things like recycled paper products. Sometimes brushes are made with recycled products, canvases as well. If you type in eco-friendly art products, there's a whole list of things. So you can try doing that. Save your scraps to use in something else. You all know that's a big practice of mine. Repurpose non-toxic household items. We're going to be doing that today. Reuse things like magazines, gift wraps, calendars, books. Use t-shirts, old t-shirts for rags, plastic containers, things like that. To-go boxes and stuff you can save for mixing your paints. Anything like that, or recycle all of that. We're going to talk about making a paint that is biodegradable today. And another tip that's fun to think about is to use up your materials with each studio session. I know a lot of times, like, I'll paint and paint, and then I have a bunch of paint left over, and I cover it, thinking I'll use it again, and then I kind of don't, and it all dries up, and I toss it out. So you might think about making it a habit to try to use up your materials with each studio session. And then finally, maybe don't purchase so much stuff. Give yourself a challenge to not buy anything new for 3 months. Sometimes limitations can make interesting art. I know it's really fun to buy like cool things though, and I understand the urge to do that, but you might limit yourself with that. But also give yourself a break and use things that make you happy. Um, and refer to the beginning of my blog post. I would love to hear about. You can write them in the chat here. If you're watching this in the future, you can leave a comment and just tell me other tips and things that you do, because there's lots of little things. All right, that's my spiel. And like I said, refer to the link anytime. There's lots of links to other articles on there. I want to talk about making biodegradable paint. I love working with acrylic so much, and I will not stop. And in the future, I will continue doing a lot of my demos using acrylic paint or oil paint. Well, probably not oil. Probably not oil paint, but acrylic paint. So don't worry, I will be getting back to that. But for fun today, I thought it would be really fun to explore tempera paint. I've been doing a little research on it. It's a big field. It's really fascinating. Who knows? Maybe this will become something I do more of in the future. But basically, tempera paint was made using powdered pigments and egg yolk. And it produces a glossy, satiny finish that you can blend really well. And a lot of the old icon paintings were made this way. Tempera paint was used during the high Italian Renaissance period, and then was later replaced with oil paints because they lasted longer or they were more durable. The thing about using tempera paint, using an egg yolk in your paint, is that it will crack if it's on a soft surface. So if it's on canvas, eventually it will crack. So you want to use it on a panel, ideally. I'm going to actually be working on paper today, and a panel and canvas. But it was traditionally painted on a stiff surface. So let's try some. So I hope you have an egg handy, at least one. You might need more. Other things you'll want to have are like little ramekins, or I have a bunch of these little to-go containers with lids. So if you have something like that, is good. You can also just put the egg yolk on your palette and mix into it. And then another thing I have on hand is a little bit of distilled white wine vinegar or white vinegar, because if you don't use up your material in one day, it does start to create an odor. So if you put a couple drops of the vinegar into it, it keeps it from smelling. The issue is that then because this is acidic, it starts to make your paint more acidic and it will break down a little bit faster. It's not as archival. But paintings are meant to kind of go away. I'm okay with that. So you'll want to have those things on hand, and then you'll want things to color your paint with. So, like I said, traditionally people used dry pigments, and you can order those online. I'm not expecting you to have any today. Someone gave me a bunch of these amazing pigments that they got in a foreign land, and I tried a couple of them, and they're stunning. The colors are amazing. However, I don't know what this is, and it could be very toxic. Anytime you're handling dry pigments, even if you know what they are, always wear a mask or a respirator, because you inhale this and it's not good for you. It's also recommended, if you ever work with chalk pastels, to wear a mask using those as well, because the powders can come up and it's not good to inhale them. So these days, it should be easy. You probably have a mask. An N95 mask is ideal. I'm trying to see. We just got these masks. They're not medical, but something like that you could use when you're handling the powder pigments. I'm not going to work with them today because I'm going to just assume you don't have them. Instead, I'm going to figure out other things to use to make color, to use for color. So something you could try is food coloring, if you have it. Where is I had around here some instant coffee. Works so well. This stuff is so cool. I mean, I'm not going to show the brand, but little instant coffee will work. What else do I have here? We're going to experiment with using chalk pastels. And I have a little grater here, maybe grating some of that up for pigment. And then finally, something you can use, where are they? Is if you have watercolor tubes, which some of you might have, and I understand some of you might not, but I have gouache, which is an opaque watercolor. So I'm going to be using some of this, but you could also use watercolor in a tube. And actually, if you have dried watercolors, the kind that dry out and then you reconstitute them, those would work too. What the egg yolk is going to do is it's going to extend that paint a little further, and it's also it's the binder. It's going to keep the pigments bound together and also keep it bound to your surface a little better than if you were to just paint with water. How's everyone doing? Am I talking too much? Okay, so what we're going to do, we need the yolk out of this egg. So you might have experience separating a yolk and an egg. So you'll want to have 2 containers. I'm going to have one that I can keep the white part of my egg in. And let's see, maybe I can do this so you can see a little better. Sorry, got my elbow there. Eeks. Oh no. Right, I got to get the yolk out of there. So you can save your eggshells also, and when they dry out, you can actually also use those in your artwork as well. There is what's called a slotted spoon. Some of you might have it to help you separate the egg. The thing is you really don't want any of the white goo in your egg. And one of the things that I saw online, and there are lots of tutorials on this out there. One of the things I saw here, I'm going to do it in here. I hope I do this right, is to put it in a paper towel like this, or a cloth, whatever it takes, and then pop that with a pin and extract the yolk from it. And wouldn't you know, I don't have a pen on me. But you see, like, the white part is sinking into the fabric. So I'll pop this with a pencil instead. And the reason why you do this is because you want as little of the egg sac to come out. Shoot. Okay. It's happening. It's happening. So yeah, whatever it takes to just get that goo from the very middle of the egg yolk. And not the egg sac itself. So I'm gonna just put this aside and deal with it off camera. But so yeah, I have just this like very pure egg yolk mixture or stuff now. And basically, if you're familiar with using acrylic glazing fluid, it's the same thing. And it doesn't even really discolor your pigments very much. So let's see, I'll come back down here so you can see this. So I have this now. So something you could try doing is you could actually, I'm going to mix a little bit of this off into this amazing little kitty platter I have. Put a tiny bit in there. And let's see, I'm going to try some food coloring in here first and just see what happens with that. This is blue food coloring. It makes a really nice, pure color. You can mix some water in here. And if you're gonna not use it all up before the end of the day, you can mix a couple drops of vinegar into it. So since we're trying to stick with being eco-friendly, I'm going to paint on an old notebook, some notes. And I'm going to turn them upside down so hopefully you don't see them. And put your egg white aside. Use that for something else. Use it for an omelet. So you can see this is an amazing color. One thing I didn't talk about also, since I'm painting on top of this text here, something I read is that anytime you get markers that are permanent, or they say they're waterproof, they're a little bit more toxic than water-based markers. So how gorgeous is that? So let's say I want something a little more opaque. I am going to use some of my gouache. I'm going to use my titanium white gouache. I'm going to put a little of that down also. And, you know, you can just use water in your gouache, but the egg yolk will make it a little more, it will bind a little better. And it actually doesn't yellow it too much. So let's see how opaque that is. You can see it's covering up that text pretty well. If you don't have gouache and you don't have watercolor, you can just use your acrylic paint and just use the egg white or the egg yolk to extend your acrylic paint. So something you might do is you might make different batches of this. Now, I'm going to admit this is one that I made with the pigments that were given to me. So they are very bright. But yeah, if you paint on a board, you're going to get a different effect as well. Pretty awesome, right? So let's see, I'm going to do that. I have this piece, oops, sorry. I have this piece here that I've done little things to over the weeks. And I'm going to try using my instant coffee. Now I'm going to put some of that down here on the palette. So you can pretend that's like a pigment, a dry pigment. And then I'm going to use my egg yolk here. And I'm just going to grab some with my brush and mix it into this like that. Use a little bit of water also. It's pretty light, but it's still, that makes a really good glaze. Hold that up. So you can see all the textures now. And yeah, what's really fun is this is totally compatible with all your paper and mixed media and glue and all of that stuff that you've been using up to this point. I'm also going to try to just mix some water. It might require hot water. I'm going to just mix water into the coffee. First, and then take a little bit of the binder and mix that in. And then let's see what happens here. So that's a little bit darker, not terribly darker. But it makes a really luscious texture. And it's really easy to blend. This is very, very similar to the acrylic glazing medium. I am not sure about how well it adheres things. So I think we should conduct a little experiment. I'm going to be right back. Right. We're going to do that paper napkin trick again. Take the top layer of a paper napkin. I'm going to just take the egg yolk and brush it over the top. I have a good feeling that this will work really well and it will just adhere in there with something thinner like that. It's awesome. And it smells like coffee. How about using turmeric? I think that would be really good to play with. I think with some of the spices, I mean, yeah, turmeric is perfect. You might try putting hot water or even putting an oil or something to help dissolve it a little bit better, but yes, turmeric, hibiscus, blueberries. Uh, there's so many things, natural things that you can extract color from. You can pulverize things, or like with hibiscus, put some hot water on it, a little bit, so that it turns that really amazing red color, and then try mixing that in to your binder. And then I was thinking, well, I'm not a big makeup wearer, but if you have, like, I have this little thing I got in Halloween and I never used, but I'm thinking, like, can I use this? I know it's glitter, but what else am I going to do with that, right? So, can you see that? Yeah, it kind of worked. It's just a glitter-based makeup. Like if you have something that's more, it's not just glitter, but there's other things in it, you might be able to use that too. Makeup is really fun to use for some of these processes also. I just don't really have any. So yeah, just experiment with mixing different colors and such into your egg yolk. Let's see, this is black. And you might also just try to be aware of the chemical or whatever is in the, if you're using a cadmium yellow, etc. So that's just yellow gouache. If you have a little mortar and pestle, that's a good thing to use. Also, now I have this, I do actually think these are flakes from some, like Formica flakes. I could, if I had mortar and pestle, I could grind them up a little smaller. But let's see if they will adhere. I kind of did this the wrong way. So yeah, water, you can mix a little water into your paint in addition to the egg yolk. But really, I mean, with just this knowledge that you can mix egg yolk into your pigments, I mean, there's so much you can do with this now. I hope you all are trying this. Another thing, we're going to try using a grater, and I'm going to take one of my chalk pastels, and I'm going to just grate a little bit of that. So it's not as fine. This powder probably isn't as fine as it would be, if I bought an actual pigment, but it's still working. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so just grind up your chalk pastels and use those. instead of going out and buying some dry pigments, unless you do want to play with it. Pretty neat. Yeah, I tried this out a little bit over the last week, but I haven't really had a good opportunity to really explore it. But I just feel like just knowing you can use an egg yolk as your binder opens up so many possibilities. And like I said, you could use it with um, your acrylic paint too. Some archivists might get mad at me and say that this isn't archival, but it's eco-friendly. Another thing that I tried since, I cracked the egg and there's so many eggshells, I've been working with the eggshells. So, like when you crack your egg, then there's this kind of filmy, slimy stuff. There's usually like a film stuck to the inside of the eggshell. And I found like I have to pull that off. And then I'm left with these dry egg shell pieces. So what I did is use some Elmer's glue because, again, this Elmer's glue and PVA glue, which it stands for polyvinyl, maybe it's polyvinyl adhesive, but those are more biodegradable than your acrylic gel mediums. I love the acrylic gel mediums because there's so much you can do with them, but for the sake of this lesson, the Elmer's glue or PVA glue, if you get it, is more, I guess, more biodegradable. So I'm going to just brush that out on my canvas here. And then take the little egg pieces, and what I've been doing is I just lay them in there. And you can really just do either side. And then I crunch them in. That's like the most satisfying part. So then I have this interesting texture. And I was going to play around, since this is dry now, and it's holding up pretty well. I'm going to play around with painting with my tempera on top of this and just seeing what kinds of textures I can get that way. So I'm going to use some white and blue. That could be cool to get really thin with the application of paint and see what that does. Let's see. Take a little bit of water and just kind of dab it over this and see. I was thinking if I just did a light stain, it could make an interesting effect. think I like it with the brown a lot better. And I chose to do the outside of the eggshell out. It was a little bit easier to crunch it down. Yeah, I like that better with the brown. That creates a really cool texture. I'm going to use some more food coloring. So red and green make brown. So I'll try a little red food coloring, a little green food coloring, and my egg yolk. Mix those together for a nice dark color. And it does have a kind of glossy effect. Gosh, that's really pretty. I believe it will dry somewhat glossy. That's a really nice color. And that's just dark red and dark green. And I thought also, if you do have water-based pens and markers, I have a really good one somewhere. Where are you? Here it is. Ones that bleed, like this one I know bleeds. You can also, let's see. You know, draw with it. And then use your egg yolk and blend it. I mean, even the technique that I've shown you in the past where you take charcoal or chalk pastel and draw with it. And then I would have you take your acrylic glazing medium and blend it, but now you can use your egg yolk and blend it. Lots of possibilities. And I'm looking in my dish here, and I'm seeing just this really cool mixing of things. And that makes me feel like I could probably dump that onto a canvas or a board and let that dry, and you'd have this nice like pouring, swirly effect. So that's just one thing that you can do. Take egg yolks and put them into your colors. Another, like something, I know people like to paint rocks a lot. For some reason, I feel weird taking acrylic paint and putting it on a rock. I have no idea what, that's my own thing. But you could try taking gesso, which is usually a little more biodegradable, paint your rock with that, and then work with your tempera on top of that. So that's a fun challenge. It's just kind of fun to think about like these materials in a different way. So I want to share a link before I end this to this artist. And I remember seeing his paintings years ago. His name is Jimmy Lee Sudduth, and he's no longer living, but he's a folk artist. He's considered a folk artist, and including a link there. But because he was living in poverty, he just had to like find tools around his house to work with. And he experimented with lots of different things, with clay, earth, rocks, and he came up with a medium that he referred to as sweet mud. Sweet mud. I love that. And it's basically he took sugar and mixed it with mud, and the sugar makes the paint bind. It's a binder. So that's something else that we haven't even explored, but you can try dissolving some sugar and mixing it into mud and using that as paint. How cool. Or even like, maybe when I'm done here, I'll try dissolving a little bit of sugar and mixing it into these pigments and just see what that does. Back in the 80s, I tried to have big hair. My mom didn't let me use shampoo or hairspray, probably for the best. And we would take I remember trying sugar and trying to keep my hair big with sugar. Egg whites also worked. Okay, just a fun little story to leave you with. So I hope you enjoyed this. I think it's really fun. I think try exploring everything. I've talked about this in the past. My friend Alana made this walnut ink just from using walnuts. It did require a lot of boiling. So that, you have to think about the energy that goes into these things, but it required a lot of heat, it sounds like. But what a cool, this is such a gorgeous material. And I think I can mix this with my egg yolk. And I'm going to do it right now. Put a couple drops down for you to see. Put it right there. And I'm going to take some of my egg yolk and mix it in there. And I have this amazing sepia color. I think it's going to look better on paper. Yep. So I hope you try some things out. Feel free to share your experiments with me. I'd love to see them. I'd love to see what you come up with. We might try more of this in the future. Next week, I want to do an experimental intuitive drawing practice, and we are going to be devising some of our own tools and paints and things. So this could be a really good material that you use in that class. I want to say one more thing I forgot to mention is charcoal. I had talked about how it's really difficult. It's actually hard on the environment to produce charcoal. Kind of, it's all relative, but a really good tool you can use is if you're camping this summer or know people who are camping, or if you have a wood fire or something, take one of your the sticks from it that have charred. It's a really, really great drawing tool to work with a charred stick. You might try it even if you work with, if you have incense, working with the end of that, or a match. Anytime you see something charred, you can use that as a drawing tool. So just a little heads up on that. I'm going to go camping next week, and I'm going to bring back some of my, some charcoal sticks to draw with. So I'm going to be working with that next week a little bit too. Joanne, you're having fun with the eggshells. I'm really glad. All right, everyone, this was super fun. Again, like I said, if you have more little tips and stuff that you want to share, please leave them in the comments below. And it's really great to see everyone again. Thank you so much for checking in. Feel free to share this video with your friends. And I'm looking forward to next week. Um, so until then, have a really good week. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Bye, everyone.